You do not break a fortified front. That is the rule everyone believes in 1914. You dig in. You entrench. You wait. And you grind the enemy down with artillery and men until one side collapses first. For centuries, fortifications win wars. In this new industrial conflict, the logic feels unbreakable. Machine guns fire 600 rounds a minute. Barbed wire turns open ground into a killing field. Artillery can reach farther than any army has ever marched. The defense, everyone agrees, has finally beaten the attack. So Britain digs. France digs. Germany digs. From the North Sea to the Swiss border, the Western Front hardens into a scar nearly 450 miles long. Two massive armies stare at each other across strips of mud sometimes no wider than a football field. Sometimes wider than a mile. Always lethal. British commanders believe victory will come through endurance. Through attrition. Through breaking the enemy by killing him faster than he can replace his losses. And at first, that belief feels reasonable. But by 1915 something is wrong. You fire millions of shells. You send hundreds of thousands of men over the top. And the front barely moves. Then comes 1916. And at the Somme, the rule finally shatters. Captain Ernest Swinton is 47 years old when the war reaches its deadlock. He is not a glamorous cavalry officer or a battlefield hero. He is a royal engineer. A thinker. A writer. A man trained to solve problems with diagrams and logic rather than bravado. Before the war, Swinton writes about military theory. He studies how technology reshapes combat. He understands one dangerous truth: modern firepower has outrun old tactics. In 1914, Swinton goes to France as a war correspondent and staff officer. He walks the trenches. He listens to the men. He watches attacks fail. What he sees unsettles him. The British Army assaults German lines again and again. Artillery pounds the enemy for days. Then whistles blow. Infantry climb ladders. And machine guns cut them down in seconds. At Neuve-Chapelle, loose and smaller, forgotten attacks, the pattern repeats. Swinton writes home with growing urgency. Trenches, he realizes, are not a phase of the war. They are the war. By mid-1916, Britain prepares for the largest offensive in its history, the Battle of the Somme. The plan is simple. Artillery will obliterate German defenses. Infantry will walk forward and occupy the ruins. The breakthrough will come. Swinton is not convinced, because he has done the math. July 1, 1916. At 7:30 a.m., after a week-long artillery bombardment involving 1.7 million shells, the British Army attacks along a 25-mile front. You stand in the trench as the whistles blow. You climb the ladder. You walk, not run. Because doctrine says discipline matters more than speed. The ground shakes under your boots. Smoke hangs in the air. You expect to see shattered wire and stunned defenders. Instead, German machine guns rise from concrete bunkers untouched by the shelling. They fire. The sound is not one sound but many, metallic ripping, overlapping bursts that tear the air apart. Men fall in rows. Entire units disappear in minutes. By nightfall, Britain has suffered 57,470 casualties. 19,240 are dead. It is the worst day in British military history. And the front has moved less than a mile. Swinton walks the battlefield afterward. He sees bodies tangled in wire. Rifles sunk into mud. Helmets filled with rainwater and blood. This is not a temporary setback. This is systemic failure. The Somme drags on for 141 days. When it ends, over 1 million men from both sides are casualties. The British Army gains at most 6 miles of ground. So what does victory even mean now? Swinton reaches a conclusion that many commanders refuse to face. No amount of courage can cross open ground dominated by machine guns. The infantry is being asked to do the impossible. And if nothing changes, the slaughter will never end. Swinton begins thinking differently. If men cannot cross the killing zone on foot, what if something else could? He remembers seeing American Holt tractors pulling heavy loads across rough terrain. He imagines an armored vehicle that can cross trenches, crush wire, and shield its crew from bullets. In October 1914, Swinton has already written a memo suggesting an armored, tracked vehicle for the battlefield. It is ignored. Now, after the Somme, it no longer can be. He writes again, more forcefully. He explains the problem in brutal terms. Artillery alone cannot destroy dug-in defenses. Infantry alone cannot survive the crossing. What is needed is a machine that combines firepower, protection, and mobility. A weapon that breaks the rules of trench warfare. At first, resistance is fierce. Senior officers scoff. Tanks, they argue, are mechanical fantasies. Too slow. Too unreliable. Too strange. But the casualty lists keep growing. And reality has a way of winning arguments. By 1915, a secret committee forms under the deliberately dull name the Landships Committee. Swinton becomes one of its key advocates. Prototypes appear. They are ugly, boxy, loud. They break down constantly. Crews suffer from heat, fumes, and engine fires. But they do something no human can do. They cross no man's land. They roll over wire. They terrify defenders who have never seen anything like them. Still, doubt remains. Commanders fear embarrassment. Fear wasting resources. Fear change itself. Then comes September 15, 1916. At Flers-Courcelette, during the Somme offensive, Britain deploys tanks for the first time in history. 49 tanks are available. Only 32 reach the starting line. Mechanical failure claims the rest. The survivors lumber forward at walking speed. German soldiers stare in disbelief as steel monsters emerge from smoke. Machine gun bullets bounce off armor. Wire collapses under tracks. Trenches are crossed that would have killed thousands of men days earlier. Not all tanks succeed. Many break down. Some are destroyed by artillery. But the effect is undeniable. The line moves. For the first time in 2 years, the trenches do not dictate everything. And at this moment, this fragile, terrifying experiment, Britain realizes something fundamental. The rule was wrong. If you find this kind of forgotten history as fascinating as we do, we'd be honored if you'd hit that subscribe button. We believe these stories of courage, sacrifice, and hard-earned military genius deserve to be told. And by subscribing, you help us ensure they aren't forgotten. What German commanders do not know, what most British commanders barely understand, is that the Somme has already changed warfare forever. The tank is not yet decisive, but it points the way forward. By 1917 at Cambrai, Britain uses tanks en masse, over 470 vehicles, without a preliminary artillery bombardment. The result is stunning. German lines collapse across a 6-mile front in hours. The era of pure trench warfare is ending. Artillery, infantry, armor, and aircraft begin to operate together. Combined arms, still clumsy, still experimental, emerges from the mud. German doctrine changes. So does French. So does British. What the Somme proves at unbearable cost is this. Industrial war cannot be won with 19th century thinking. The tank will evolve. Faster engines. Better guns. Radios. Coordination. Within 2 decades, armored warfare will decide the fate of Europe. But its birth comes here. In blood. In failure. In the moment Britain finally accepts that trenches are not a solution, but a symptom. Captain Ernest Swinton survives the war. He watches tanks become central to military planning. He writes about what he witnessed. He understands that innovation did not come from brilliance alone, but from catastrophe. The men who died on July 1, 1916, never see the change they forced. Many are teenagers, clerks, miners, students. Their names fill memorials across Britain. Thiepval, Ypres, London. Entire villages lose a generation in a single morning. To this day, the Somme stands as a warning. Not just about war, but about refusing to adapt. Because every doctrine, no matter how logical, eventually faces reality. And reality does not care what you believe. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Every click tells the algorithm this piece of history is worth remembering. We're dedicated to rescuing these forgotten stories from the archives. If you want to join us on this mission, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment with your city or country and tell us if someone in your family served. Thank you for ensuring that Ernest Swinton and the 19,240 men lost on the first day of the Somme do not disappear into silence. They deserve to be remembered.